Okay, we are live again, and after a break of a couple of weeks, we're back on with the Parasha Shir. So I'd like to first of all thank Michael and Ivor for coming and being my live audience. I'd like to thank the band in the background to add a little bit of spice to this Shir, because we're having a chasna here at the same time tonight. Thank everybody who's on Zoom, and thank everybody who's come also on Facebook Live. And thank you to Torah Anytime for hosting tonight's Shir. Any quality Torah content can be found over there. Go and have a look. Right. So today we're going to be discussing different ideas in Parasha Acharei Mos. Parasha Acharei Mos is an interesting parasha because it starts off with the Seder of Yom Kippur. We read about what Aaron HaKohen had to do on Yom Kippur and what the subsequent Kohanim Gedolim did on Yom Kippur when they went into the Beis HaMikdash or into the Mishkan. Then we read about a few other Isurim such as blood and shechting animals outside, etc., and covering the blood. And then we move on to different things that are forbidden, different forbidden relationships, etc., which we also lay on Yom Kippur. So we have all these different things that are going on over here. So I'd like to start with the following idea, an idea that I saw today in Rav Schwab's Sefer, which I found a beautiful Sefer. It was a very short idea, but I think within this idea, there's so much to be said for it. And you hear in a minute. So we get to the end of the entire bit of telling Aaron and Klal Yisrael what we're going to do on Yom Kippur. And now on page 644, Klal Yisrael Sparkly is back with a vengeance. Okay. What was he on page 644? The last verse over there before the end of the paragraph. Pasuk Lamed Dalet. This should be an eternal decree to forgive for Bnei Yisrael from all of their sins once a year. Vayas, and Aaron did kasher tziva Hashem es Moshe. He did just as HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Moshe Rabbeinu. Says Rashi, what did he do? What did he do that just as Hashem commanded Moshe? So Rashi says when Yom Kippur came, he did exactly as he was said to tell what Aaron did. He didn't wear these articles of clothing for his greatness. He wore those clothes as someone who's doing what he's been told to do. That is what Rashi says. So Rav Schwab asked the question, I don't understand. There's actually two sets of clothing that are worn on Yom Kippur. One are known as the Big Day Zohov, the golden clothes of the Kohen Gadol. The Kohen Gadol generally wore 8 sets of clothes, so that he had the clothes of the regular Kohen Hedyot, the regular Kohen, plus on top of that, he had the ephod, which was like a bit of a backwards apron. Yeah, right? You have the tunic, which is the me'il. You have the choshen, which is the breastplate, and you have the tzitz, which was on the head, which was the metal plate that was on his head that said Kodesh Hashem. That was what the Kohen Gadol wore, in addition to the fact that the regular Kohen had a whole bunch of other things that he wore. The other 4 clothes, which was the basic clothes, which is the trousers, the shirt, the hat, the belt. But when the Kohen Gadol went into the Kodesh HaKodashim, when he went to the Holy of Holies, he would not wear his regular clothes. He would only wear the same clothes as what the Kohen Hedyot wore. And the reason he wore the regular clothes that the Kohen Hedyot wore and not the clothes of the Kohen Gadol was because going into the Kodesh HaKodashim, you go into the Holy of Holies, it would be wrong for him to go in with gold because the Jews made a golden calf. And we didn't want to remind, in inverted commas, HaKadosh Baruch Hu of the golden calf on Yom Kippur, and so therefore we didn't wear golden clothing in the Kodesh HaKodashim because, as the word is, ein kategar nasa sanegar. A prosecutor cannot become your defense. Okay, you can't use the same 2 people for the same things. Either he's a prosecutor or he's defending. But the same guy doesn't do both. And so therefore, gold cannot go into the Beis HaMikdash on the day of Yom Kippur because you're trying to receive atonement. The last thing you want to do is show up with the kind of thing that would, again, in inverted commas, anger God. Yeah? That's why we don't wear the golden clothes. So therefore he says, to tell you that Aaron HaKohen did not wear this clothing for his greatness, but just because Hashem said so. So he's not wearing the great clothes anyway. On the way into the Beis HaMikdash, unto the Holy of Holies, what did he wear? The simple clothes. Well, if he wore the simple clothes, and why are we saying that he didn't wear this for any greatness? Now you might say, well, no, the clothes are only a symbolism of his greatness in the fact that he's the Kohen Gadol. But what Rav Schwab says over here is a beautiful idea. And he says the following. There are, Mochi's gotten kicked out and he's coming back. There is something that we call false humility. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. So let me give you an example. Here's an example of false humility. Let's say, I've had this, for example, happen. I've seen other people where this happens as well. Let's say I come into a Beis Medrash and I'm sitting in the back. And whoever's in charge over there, the Gabbai, the warden, comes over to me and says, Rabbi, would you mind sitting in the front? And in general, I prefer the back, right? Okay, in our shul, I sit in the front. That's my job as the Rav. I sit in the front. And I think for me to sit in the back would give the wrong message. No, here I belong in the front, right? But when I go to another shul, I don't have to sit in the front. I'm happy to sit in the back. I don't think in any way it detracts from any of my cover that I sit in the back. I don't need it. I don't need to sit in the front, okay? Now, what happens is as follows. There are two types of shuls where somebody will come and say, excuse me, do you mind coming to sit in the front? And the conversation goes one of two ways. Either conversation goes, listen, I prefer to sit in the back. And they're like, you want to sit here? Fine. Or the conversation goes, please. It will be our honor and our pleasure for you to sit in the front. No, I really don't want to. The rabbis asked me specifically to come, right? Now, I can do one of two things at that point. What are the two options that I have? Either I stay behind and I dig my heels in and I say, no. I am sitting in the back. But what's going to end up happening when I dig my heels in and I end up sitting in the back? That's one thing, that's true. But more importantly, at one point or another, who's going to realize that this whole conversation is going on? Everybody there suddenly realizes, and then what happens? You get more, everyone's looking, you get more exposure for refusing to go to the front than you do for just quietly going to the front and sitting in the front. Because you know what? Once I go to the front, people are like, oh, you're going to the front. Okay, fine. I'm not on any illusion that people are like, wow, he's sitting in the front. He's so amazing. He's so great. Come on. It's just me, right? No, nobody's getting all excited about me sitting in the front. So, I want in the front, right? Look down. But if I make a fuss of myself, I actually make a bigger splash of myself trying to stay in the back than going to the front. Now, if I have somebody where I say no and they just walk away, and they said no, they walked away, and that was the end of it. But as soon as it starts to become a protracted conversation and negotiation, you got a problem there. Because the last thing I want is for this to be a protracted conversation. Because the longer it is, the more people are like, come on, we've asked you. No, I know you want to sit in the back. And that what then turns that, that's what we call false humility. And false humility is really a form of what? Form of arrogance, right? Because now I want everyone to see what? How wonderfully humble I am. Do you know what I'm talking about, Ivor? Yeah, you get this, Michael? Do you see what I'm saying, right? Sometimes by being humble, you're really sticking it to someone else. But there are people that know how to do this, and they do it in like an exquisite way, and everyone's like, oh, such a show-off, such a faker, right? And sometimes being a show-off, you can be a show-off by what? By not showing off. Sometimes it's the other way around. Just doing the normal thing, right? So let's say, for example, I walked into shul. Let's say if I wasn't the rabbi even. Let's say I walked into the shul and I walked in tattered clothing, in ripped clothing. And you came over and says, excuse me, what happened to your suit? And I said to you, listen, Mr. Greenberg, you might be very into sort of the mundane things. I don't take any note of what goes on in the world. And if my clothing is ripped or rendered, nothing worse should happen. I'm just as great a person as I was if I had a full suit. Now, it sounds on the one hand very esoteric, right? In reality, Who is getting more people to look at them? Me or you? Me, right? You're wearing a regular suit. You come in, people are like, oh, Michael Greenberg's here. Everyone's like, what's the guy wearing? Who does he think he is? Why is he wearing that? And then everybody comes over and asks me the question. I'm like, no, I've decided to take the view that this is just extras. And we're not on this world for all these extras. We're on this world to just live with the minimum that God gives us. This is the minimum, right? Now, is that the minimum? No, it's not the minimum. It's beyond. It's way below the minimum, right? It's interesting. The Archas Tzadikim, actually, he speaks over there, and it's one of their famous Musasvarim. He speaks over there about humility. And he says that, he speaks about clothing, for example. So he says, you should wear normal clothes for your surroundings. That means don't wear tattered clothes and don't wear the fanciest clothes. Wearing the fanciest clothes, that's arrogance, right? You go somewhere and everybody else is wearing a regular suit and your suit has to be like this fancy silk suit with an Armani tie, and everybody realizes this guy spent like 3,000 pounds on his wardrobe when everybody else here spent 200. Okay. So you're a bit of an arrogant individual. But the other way around, he says, is also wrong. You cannot go to the opposite extreme. If you wear tattered clothes, that's wrong also. Because it makes people look at you. It makes people think that you're weird and it's not normal. And nobody should be wearing tattered clothing unless you can't really afford. But to wear tattered clothing to make a statement, what statement are you making? It's actually a statement of arrogance. It's not a statement of humility, right? And so therefore, what happens over here is Aaron Cohen is going into the Kodesh HaKadoshim, he's going to the Holy of Holies, and what he's going to be wearing now is a white clothes. But he could be going into the Kodesh HaKadoshim and saying like, I can't wear the gold clothes. I made the egel. I feel this great contrition inside my heart for having helped the Jewish people create this terrible sin of the golden calf. And so I feel so terrible about what happened. And I'm now going to go into the Kodesh HaKadoshim only with the regular clothes. It's can you hear somebody talking like that? What do you hear over there? Do you hear a certain amount of falseness? Does it just come through really badly? And Aaron realizes, he says, this is not about me. If I wear fancy clothes, that's because God said so. But if I'm wearing regular clothes, I'm not going to make a big fuss of myself either for wearing the regular clothes. Do you know why I'm wearing regular clothes? Because Hashem said so. Hashem says in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, wear regular clothes. Okay, you said so, that's what we do. It's not because I'm trying to score points over here, to show how humble I am, to show how great I am. It's got nothing to do with me. But that's the point. Humility can also be a show of arrogance. It's very interesting. I think they came to Rabbi Yisrael Salanter. Rabbi Yisrael Salanter was the famous head of the Muslim movement. He's the one who founded the Muslim movement. And they said to him, before he's dying, on his deathbed, they said to him, Rebbe, is the Yetzer Hara still working on you? He says, sure, he never gives up. He never stops. He said, really, but you're dying. What can the Yetzer Hara already get you to do? What Avera are you going to do on your deathbed? And to which Rabbi Yisrael Salanter says, you know what he's saying to me? He's saying, say Shema with such kavanah that everybody standing there is going to go, wow, look what a great man. Look how he says Shema on his deathbed. Look at that kavanah. That was our Rebbe. Really? So what's that Shema going to do? What is that Shema really there to do? It's an arrogant Shema. It's a Shema that's full of arrogance. And that's what Rabbi Yisrael Salanter said, on my deathbed, I'm about to die. And what is the Yetzer Hara saying to me? Make a show of yourself. But not by saying how great you are. No, there's a humility in that. I'm not telling you to tell all your students what you knew. Don't make a fuss of yourself. Say Shema in a way that everyone's going to be so impressed with you. Wow. Listen to that Shema. Listen to the way he says it. Yeah, that is humility, or it's really arrogance cloaked in humility. That's what it is. And therefore, Aaron Cohen says, I'm not going to fall for this trick. I'm not going to become arrogant under the guise of humility. If God says white clothes, it's white clothes. But why? Because God said so. Not because I'm trying to pull a show over here. Okay? That is the first idea that we have over here. Now, the second idea second idea is an idea that I saw in the name of the Chassam Sofer, Ramosha Schreiber. The Chassam Sofer speaks over here about the idea that you have to you're not allowed to eat blood. Okay? So we're on page 646 in the Art Scroll, Siddur. So look at Pasuk Yud, right? Verse 10. Parak Yud Zayin, Pasuk Yud. The Ishish from Beis Yisrael, a person from the Jewish people, and from the proselytes that lives among them, that eats any blood. I will put my face towards the soul that eats that blood, and I will get rid of it. I will cut it off from amidst of its people. And the question that the Chassam Sofer asks is, what's so bad about eating blood that we have to make such a fuss over here? Okay, so the guy ate blood. You know what? If a guy eats chazer, treif, does he get cut off from his people? No. What about meat and milk together? Cut off from his people? No. Blood? Yes. So there's something inherent about the blood that's worse than chazer, that's worse than shellfish or eel or whatever else it might be, and worse than meat and milk together. So what is it? Why is this blood so bad? There must be some kind of idea that's going on over here that takes the blood to the next level and says, this is really, really bad. Okay? First point. Second point. If you have a look over here, verse Yud Aleph, Ki nevesh habasar, the soul of the flesh, badomhi. Right? The soul of a person is where the nevesh, the soul of flesh is in the blood, right? So he's telling you, where is the soul? The soul is in the blood. And then afterwards, it says on the next page, 648, chapter 14, verse 14, Ki nevesh kol basar, the soul of each person, Damo, his blood, benafshohu. His blood is in his nefesh. So wait, the first verse said, read it again, the soul is in the blood. So is the soul in the blood or in the blood in the soul? Which one of the two is it? Yeah? Strange question, right? But I saw a few people that asked the question, and the Chassam Sofer asked this question as well. Which one is it? So Chassam Sofer says the following. He says, gives the following, he starts off giving the following mashal, and then from there on, we move on to the idea that he wants to say. He says, so, Michael, let me ask you a question. What's more important, the house or the people that live in it? The people that live in it, right? As Michael says, quite rightly. People, because what's the house being built for? The house is only there to serve the people that live in it. Okay? However, says Rav Sofer, Rav Moshe Sofer, the Chassam Sofer, that's not always true. Because that's only true if I were to ask you between me and you. But if you were an architect, what's more important? The house, yeah? If you're an estate agent, the house. If you're a conveyancing solicitor, a mortgage broker, all those things, house, right? They're really busy much more with the house than with the actual people that are in it. Their main job is the house. So if you took a famous architect, into a house, into some houses, you ever come into houses like a museum of modern art? You ever into any of these fancy houses and they have like this and that, they have all these kind of things that are around. Look, this is a painting. This one cost us £1 million, and this chair is a museum piece, and this is this and this that. So you take people around. Some people come inside a house and look around and go, look, how nice. This is where the father sits. That's where the mother sits. This is where the kids play, because they're very into the people, right? You come to a house, I want to see what's going on with the people. But other people walk into a house and they want to see. An interior designer walks into the house and wants to know, what does the kitchen look like? And what do the bathrooms look like? And did they use tiles, or did they use carpet, or did they use laminate or wooden floors? You go inside and you see these things because that's what speaks to you. So I know people that are in kitchens that walk into every house and they look around, and right away the first thing they look at is the kitchen. But who cares about the kitchen? What about the... No, I'm in kitchens. For me, the kitchen makes a difference because that's where I'm at. Yeah. So in general, the person is the main thing in a house. But for certain individuals, the house is more important. Yeah. You could as well. Yeah, the kitchen very often says something about the people that live there. So the more intricate and less user-friendly the kitchen is, the more you can tell that the balabusta doesn't really cook much. Okay? I've been to certain kitchens. They're beautiful. They just don't lend themselves so much to cooking, because whoever it is that cooks in that kitchen doesn't use it so often, or has a few maids that do the cooking for them, right? We want a practical kitchen. A beautiful kitchen is lovely, but even if the kitchen is not beautiful, it's got to be practical at least, right? That much I need. Yeah? And if the things are lying around all over the place, it's a pain. Can't use it. So that's the difference between the practical kitchen and the beautiful kitchen. Okay? So you got one person who's into the people and one person who's into the house. So now the question I'm asking you is like this. You got the person and you got an animal. What's the difference between a person and an animal? What is the difference? The soul, right? Because physically speaking, is there such a big difference between us as people and animals as animals? So we're two-legged animals, but are our feet so different, so radically different to the feet of other animals? Pardon? Yeah, very good. We got two souls. Very good. Right? Okay, some animals have four souls, right? For that, but for that matter. But are my feet so different to a monkey's feet? Slightly, but not massively, right? Is my heart hugely different to the heart of a giraffe or the heart of an elephant? Don't know. They fulfill similar functions, right? The giraffe's heart has to be much, much stronger than my heart because it got to pump blood all the way up that head, right? And it's got certain things inside its head so that when it burns down its head, it doesn't faint, right? Okay, giraffes have certain wonderful things in the head, but we all have vertebrae and we all have bones and we all have veins and sinews and muscles. There is a lot that we have in common with animals. Is our body so different to the body of an animal? Not at all. So what's the difference between me and an animal? The soul. And what is my main function? What is the main part of the person? The body or the soul? The soul. My main part is my soul. It just happens to be also that, my soul needs a way to get around this world, right? So my body is my car that drives my soul around wherever it needs to go. So I got the body and I got the soul. That's what you have over here. But the main thing is the soul, and the body is the transportation method for that soul. Okay? Now let me ask you the question the other way around. What's the main thing in an animal? The body. But how do I transport a body around without a battery? Yeah? How's it going to get around? How am I going to get an animal to go from A to B? Do you know how an animal gets from A to B? It's got a spark of life in it. And that spark of life, it's soul. Yeah, Clive, remember the Nefesh HaBahamis? Yes? Spoke about it so many times in Derech Hashem. The Nefesh HaBahamis, different levels, the Nefesh HaBahamis and the, et cetera, right? You've seen the diagram plenty of times. Okay? So the bottom levels, you have what's called a Nefesh HaBahamis. We have a Nefesh HaBahamis, and the animals also have a Nefesh HaBahamis. We also have that part of the soul. But we have higher parts of the soul as well. But the Nefesh HaBahamis is what keeps it keeps an animal alive. Without that Nefesh HaBahamis, the animal is not going to be alive. Take it away, the animal dies. But what's it there for? What's the Nefesh HaBahamis there for? To infuse the animal with a holiness, or to give the animal a battery that allows it to walk around and do stuff? It's just a battery. So who's taking one around? Is the soul taking the blood around, or is the blood taking the soul around? That's the question over here. When you deal with an individual, his soul is not in the blood, right? His blood is there for the soul, okay? When you deal with a human, that's a human being. But when you deal with an animal, it's the other way around. The soul is in the blood, right? Because the blood is the main thing. The blood is what takes everything around, and the soul is just the battery that keeps the whole thing moving. And I need a battery to keep this thing moving. I can't have it moving on its own. So therefore, says the Chassam Sofer, that's your difference over here, right? What's the main thing? The people or the house? What's the main thing over here? The soul or the body? Depends. For the animal, the body. For the human being, the soul. That's your difference that you have over here. Now, that's the difference that we have over here as well. What happens when a person eats the blood of an animal? What is he actually showing now? The blood of an animal, especially because the animal has the soul in the blood, this person is stooping to a level of saying that the physical overrides the spiritual. More important. The physical is more important than the spiritual. And therefore, this physical is going to override it. Yeah? And that's what he's saying over here. The reason you get kares for eating blood, and the reason there's this difference between the two different things, whether the blood is in the soul or the soul is in the blood, is because it depends who you're dealing with. As a human being, your blood is in your soul, not your soul is in your blood. And therefore I say to you, you're not allowed to eat the blood. Because by eating the blood of an animal, you're now stooping to the level of an animal. You're taking the physical and putting it above the spiritual. And that's wrong. Okay. One last idea that I saw this is the idea of Chassam Sofer. We just said one last idea that I saw over here in the Sefer of Reb Zalman Sorotzkin in the Oznaim L'Torah. Zalman Sorotzkin says the following. We are page 648, chapter 18. Hashem sees Moshe saying, Pasuk base. Like the acts of the Egyptians where you live there, you shouldn't do. And like the acts of the people of Canaan, so that I bring you there, you shouldn't do. So the question that he asks is as follows. Like the acts of Eretz Mitzrayim, which you live there, you shouldn't do. What does it mean which you live there? There seems to be a point about living there that we're trying to point out. What difference does it make if I lived there, if I didn't live there? Is that just a physical thing? He's saying, listen, you lived in Egypt, that's the guys I'm talking about. You didn't live in Canaan yet, but you're getting there. So don't do like the Egyptians, you live there, and don't do like the Canaanites, you've not lived there yet, but you're getting there, right? But there seems to be, the Medrash says there's more about this Aisha Shafnimbo. That's number one. Number two is, number two is that if you read about the story of Yosef, when he becomes the king, people start to get bris milah. People start to take the idea of forbidden relationships seriously. So it seems that Yosef had a very, very positive effect on the Mitzrayim and their view of sexuality. And yet now the Jewish people live there, and the Mitzrayim have the most debased, degraded view of sexuality of all other nations. So what happened between this time and that time? Why was it here there was this great view of it, that people sort of revered it and thought it was really important, and now here people are looking down upon it? What is it? Which one is it? Yeah, that's the question that he asks. So he says the following. He says that some people follow successful people. And if successful people do A, then that's what they will do. And if successful people suddenly change around and all successful people say, we will never do A, I would never be seen. I wouldn't be caught dead doing A. Yeah, but you did that last week. Last week it was acceptable. It's not acceptable anymore, right? And you look around our world, not the Jewish world, but the non-Jewish world, where we have a twisted morality, where 20 years ago, what today is considered normal was considered devious behavior, aberrant behavior. People that, things that people thought was crazy then, it's normal now. I don't even want to go into the details, but there are plenty of gory details over here. Things that people have that are just absolutely mental, that 20 years ago, people thought this was crazy. Today, this is considered normal behavior. And you are a bigot and a racist and a misogynist and whatever else if you don't agree with us. But guess what? In 20 years' time, the children of today's younger generation are going to look at their parents who are today's generation and going to say to them, what? In 2020, you thought this wasn't okay? You thought in 2020 it wasn't okay to marry your dog? Are you crazy? Of course you can marry your dog. What kind of people are you? It's two consenting animals. What's wrong with you people, right? And that's what's happened with morality. Morality moves. And according to what the popular opinion is, the rest of the world seems to almost blindly follow the media and the popular opinion, unfortunately. And therefore, Yosef, what was Yosef? Yosef was the slave. And this wife of Potiphar comes to Yosef and she says, come on, let's do it. And Yosef says, you're somebody else's wife. I'm not going to be intimate with you. And she comes to him again and again and again. And he lands in jail for it. But what happens a few years after that? What does he become? Becomes the viceroy. And everybody goes, do you know how this guy became the viceroy? Because he ended up in jail. And you know how he ended up in jail? Because he stood up for what he believed was right. And you know why he stood up for what he believed was right? Because he had morals. And if I want to be a successful person, I look at one of the most successful people in the entire Egypt. You know who's successful? A guy called Joseph, very successful. He's so successful, I want to be like him. If I want to be like him, you know what I need to do? I need to make sure that I'm a moral person. I wouldn't want to be immoral, because moral people are the ones that make it far in society. Then guess what happened? And the Jewish people who remained immoral people, we read about it later on. We'll read about it in 2 weeks' time in Parshas Emor, when we read about Shlomo's Bas Divri. We read about there were very few women, if any. There was one woman who was violated in Mitzrayim, who slept with somebody else's husband. Everybody else was faithful. They were faithful. So the Jewish people kept to their rules of what? Of erva. They kept to their rules of keeping away from people that are, that are forbidden to you. They did what they were supposed to. But now the Egyptians look at the Jewish people and say, look at those people. They're all moral. What do they get for their morality? Do you know what they get for their morality? Look at them. A slave nation. You know what? Moral people end up on the bottom. Moral people are the ones that end up as slaves. If you want to get somewhere in life, you got to be immoral. Look at Pharaoh. Look at all of his officers. Look at everybody else. They're really successful. Do they keep to morality? No, of course not. So you move on with that. And a person has to know that morality is not dependent on other people's success. And if you look towards other people's success and you want to judge morality based on successful people, you're going to make mistakes again and again. So, do not do like the people in Mitzrayim where you live there. What do you mean you live there? He says, you know why they were so immoral? They were so immoral because you lived there, and they looked at you as the Jews and they said, look at those Jews. Look at them. Zero rights, slaves, the dregs of society. Do you know why? Because of their morality, because of their behavior. We don't want to be slaves. We got to behave differently. Yosef, Yosef was a big star. Why? Because he was moral. Well, we want to be moral. If your morality is going to depend on who's successful or who's not successful, if that's how you choose your morality, oy vey to such a morality. Morality never depends on success. Morality never depends on the person who says it. Morality is either right or wrong. And if the whole world's against you, but you know it's the right thing to do, you got the Torah behind you that says it's moral, then you know it's moral. And that's why, when you read afterwards, read about all these things now about marrying brothers and marrying sisters and homosexuality and mothers and daughters and then all sorts of things. And we say, this is our rules, these are morality. And the world looks at us and says, you guys are crazy. We say, we're not crazy, we have a Torah. Torah tells us, you sway. Every time some other idiot in Hollywood or somewhere else decide this is what they need to do, and this is what's acceptable, and this is what's right, the radical left, by the way, are the least forward-thinking people in the world and the most bigoted people out there. And you either agree with them or they'll try to shut you down, cancel culture, as it's called nowadays. That's what we have out there. And everybody looks at the radical left because they've become like the high flyers in society. And everybody says, oh, they're so successful, so they must be right. They must be the moral judge of our world. But we say, no, morality doesn't lie where success lies. Morality lies where truth is. And truth isn't always where success is. Sometimes success can be somewhere and morality is totally different. And that's what we learn over here. So those are the three ideas that I wanted to share with you tonight. Thank you so much for all of you who join me on Torah anytime. It's been a pleasure to be able to give you these Divrei Torah tonight again. If you want to get in touch, davideisenberg@gmail.com. Thank you to those on Facebook Live. Thank you to those on Zoom. And thank you to Ivor and Michael for being here in person. Much, much appreciated. Thank you so much. Mitzvah Hashem, to be continued next week.